great to be here, guys. Thank you for the warm welcome. I appreciate that. Thanks for hanging out with my friend while waiting for our arrival. We came in from Alabama this morning, and I don't know, did any of you guys see that debate last night? Yeah. Definitely? All right, good. I think we can cover some of that ground, but if you saw that, I'm going to zoom out a little bit. He's got it right there. You know, and it's not even her. It's what she represents. Is I think what we actually have to get out of this party. I think we've become lazy as Republicans. That's the truth. And believe me, I will hold to task the Democratic Party. I will hold to task the media establishment. But I can't do those things if we're not holding ourselves accountable for our own failures right here in this party as Republicans. And I think we've grown lazy. And I'll tell you what I mean. It's not just lazy in the tactics. There's a lot of that, too. We got to compete to win elections, all of that. That's why I've called on Ronna McDaniel to resign as the failed chairwoman of this party. But that's not what I'm talking about right now.
Okay, all right.
We've gotten lazy about describing what we even stand for. Right? We've become a party that is just criticizing what the other side puts on offer. The left, what do they feed us? Race, gender, sexuality, climate. And we've been sitting around criticizing that agenda, but without offering an actual vision of our own. What do we stand for? Individual, family, nation, God. That beats race, gender, sexuality, and climate if we have the courage to actually stand for something. For a long time, we have been running from something as Republicans. Now is our moment to actually start running to something. To our vision of what it means to be an American today. That's part of what I think was on the debate stage last night. What does it mean to be an American? Yes, people my age, that question. You get a blank stare in response. It's like a deer in the headlights. That's the question the next president needs to answer. What does it mean to be a citizen of this nation? To me, it means we believe in the ideals of the American Revolution. The ideals that my favorite president, who I talked about last night, Thomas Jefferson, wrote on a piece of paper that we call the Declaration of Independence. The idea that you get ahead in this country, not on the color of your skin, but on the content of your character and your contributions. That is why I've said that we will end affirmative action and racial quota systems in every area of American life. It has been a cancer on our national soul, and we are done with it. What does it mean to be an American? It means we believe in the rule of law. And I say this as the kid of legal immigrants to this country. That means your first act of entering this country cannot break the law, which is why we will use our own military to secure our own southern border and our northern border too. That's what it means to stand for the rule of law in the United States of America. What does it mean to be American? It means we the people create a government that is accountable to us, not the other way around. Well, today that means that the people who we elect to run the government should at least be the ones who actually run the government. Not this cancerous bureaucracy and the shadow government of the deep state and the three-letter agencies that are actually pulling the strings of power today. So you know what, if I can't be your next president for more than 8 years, which I think is a good thing, then neither should any of those federal bureaucrats reporting into me either. 8-year term limits for the bureaucracy instead of civil service protections. That's how you drain the swamp. 75% reduction in the number of federal bureaucrats by the end of my first term. Shut down government agencies that shouldn't exist anymore, from the FBI to the ATF to the CDC to the U.S. Department of Education. We can't tinker around the edges anymore. We will get in there and shut them down. That is what it means to revive the integrity of a three-branch constitutional republic. Be a CEO in the White House, I think now more than ever. Don't start with last year's budget as the baseline and then ask what's necessary, massaging it around the edges. Start with zero as the baseline. and then build it up from scratch and ask what's necessary. It's how you end the national debt, rescind a majority of the unconstitutional federal regulations that Congress never actually passed, so that we can drill, frack, burn coal, use nuclear, every form of energy, ethanol included, American energy here at home. This isn't complicated. It shouldn't be controversial. It's common sense. What does it mean to be American? It means every person's voice and vote is counted equally in an election. What does that mean? Elections we can trust and believe in. Single day voting on election day as a national holiday with paper ballots, government issued voter ID to match the voter file, and yes, English as the sole language to appear on a ballot in this country. As basics of having elections we can trust and believe in. These are not black ideas or white ideas. They're not even really Democrat ideas or Republican ideas. Not really, they shouldn't be. These are fundamentally American ideals that we fought a revolution to secure in this country. And I believe deep in my heart that those ideals still exist. I'm running for president to revive them. E pluribus unum means from many, one. That's what we've lost in this country. We've lost that common core of ideals that bind us together across our diversity. We celebrated our diversity and our differences so much that we forgot all of the ways we're really the same as Americans. And here's how we're going to get that back. It's going to be by all of us, not just me. All of us, every single one of us, speaking the truth in the open again. Say in public what you will otherwise say in private at the dinner table. Say it with a spine. Say it with conviction. Say it with respect. But part of respect is that you respect your neighbor enough to tell him what you actually think. That's how we're going to get this country back. That is what this campaign is about. Speaking the truth, not just when it's easy, but when it is hard. Speaking the truth, not just to the other side, but to our own tribe, right here in the Republican Party. That's what we're doing every day in this campaign. It's what we're doing this morning. Speak that truth without apology. God is real. There are two genders. Fossil fuels are a requirement for human prosperity. Reverse racism is racism. An open border is not a border. Parents determine the education of their children. The nuclear family is the greatest form of governance known to mankind. Capitalism lifts us up from poverty. There are 3 branches of government in the United States, not 4. And the U.S. Constitution, it is the strongest and greatest guarantor of freedom in human history. That is the truth. We fight for the truth. We stand up for the truth. That is what won us the American Revolution. That is what reunited us after the Civil War. That is what won us 2 world wars and the Cold War. That is what still gives hope to the free world. And if we can revive that dream over group identity and victimhood and grievance, then nobody in the world, not a nation, not a corporation, not a virus, not China, is going to defeat us. That is what American exceptionalism is all about. And that is what we're going to revive to save this great country. Thank you for coming out this morning, guys. We're just getting warmed up. I want to practice what we preach a little bit. I want to open this up. Let's have an open conversation. I'm asking you to seat me across the table of the likes of Xi Jinping and represent this country. That means all questions are fair game. Faith, family, domestic policy, foreign policy. Transparency is the name of the game.
Yes, sir. Thank you for coming.
Do we have a mic? And if not, I'll just bring this back to you. All right, I'll repeat it too for folks here.
Senator Tuberville has been doing quite a job down there.
He has.
Trying to hold his position. And he had to give up a little bit. Where do you come on that one?
He's asking about Senator Tuberville. I don't know if you all are familiar with that, but he I actually talked to him a few times over the last at least once, maybe from here. Yeah, I remember I was here in Iowa once when I was talking to him about this. I told him to hold the line, is what I told him. So I think the circumstance he was put in was they were going to find some workaround such that even his own holdup wasn't going to last, and that was going to have that rule change they were going to make was going to have an even more lasting consequence. One of the people who worked for him approached me in Alabama last night to tell me what happened, just so they didn't think he was just caving or waving the white flag. But I respect this idea, and I don't think it's just about the abortion issue. I think it's about the fact that we have corrupt, captured, self-hating generals populating the layers of the Pentagon at the highest levels that actually are creating a self-hating culture in our U.S. military. And so I think we have these procedures for a reason. We're not just supposed to go through and rubber stamp everything that goes through Congress as though it's an assembly line. And so for my part, and I'm in a minority here, but other senators who are friends of mine like Mike Lee and others agree on this, is that he was brave to take a stand. I think he actually did expose an issue that deserved to be exposed. And it's not just limited to the abortion issue. It goes deeper to really exposing the toxic ideologies that have captured the Pentagon and in our military. What happened is we fought, you guys want to scratch a layer deeper. Here's what happened in our country is we fought failed wars in places like Afghanistan and Iraq for 25 years that did not advance the American interest. Thousands of people, America's sons and daughters, people my age, went to go die in those wars. $7 trillion of our national debt today comes from just those two wars. And 20 years later, the Taliban is still in charge, and Iraq is still a broken country. So this is complicated. We've got to think outside of Republican versus Democrat for a second. The old criticism of the Iraq war, and even much of the Afghanistan occupation, used to come from the left. Remember that. So what the Mark Millies of the world, right, remember him, General Mark Milley? What these people want to do is they don't want that criticism, so they kind of made an implicit deal. We'll just start saying the stuff you want us to say. Indoctrinate our military about white rage and systemic racism, as long as you stop criticizing us for our failures in Iraq and Afghanistan. And so it's sort of an arranged marriage between these unlikely bedfellows, this far radical, neo-progressive woke left, and the U.S. military. But it was a mutual marriage of convenience. And I could go through this. I actually wrote a book about this in a different area, between Wall Street and the far left. The same thing happened. The left used to hit us for the 2008 bailouts. You guys remember that after the financial crisis? The left used to be the ones that criticized it because the Bush administration is the one that actually handed out the bailouts. And I was against the bailouts just like I was against the Iraq war. But they said, okay, well, it doesn't matter if you occupy Wall Street, forget about that. We'd rather just spew some knowledge about diversity, equity, inclusion, and some climate change, and we'll defang you. So that's what's happened in every area of American life, is where the left used to criticize existing institutions for their failures, those institutions started bending the knee to the left. That's exactly what happened in our own military as well. So for all of those reasons, that's a long way of saying I respect what Senator Tuberville was doing. I respect senators like Mike Lee, who had the courage to say so publicly. I understand why he had to relent, because they were going to force it around him anyway. But I applaud him for his efforts, and I'll tell him as much the next time I speak to him. Thank you for the question. Do you agree with me on that? Good. I appreciate that. A lot of Republicans actually disagree with me on that. Most of those on the debate stage last night, I think all of them, disagree with me on that. But I think if you don't stand for principle, then what's the point of going through the motions? Thank you very much. The questions back here, or others in the back? We got one right here. If we're going to come here, then we can come back to that side.
Vivek,
yep.
I don't need to tell you, I'm sure you know, but Jimmy Carter started the...
we got the microphone if you'd like.
The Department of Energy.
Yes.
At the time he started, they put $800,000 and 8 employees. Today it's what, 26 million
That's right.
and 20-some thousand employees.
It doesn't need to exist.
Can you get rid of that?
Yeah, I think we can get rid of that. And I think that this is one of the ones that falls under our constitutional authority for the U.S. president to get rid of. So I'll use this as a chance to say, I've said I want to shut down agencies. We've offered the clearest plans to do this of anybody. There are limited circumstances where the president can do this on his own because Congress has already given them the authority. If it promotes the economy, if it reduces inefficiency in operations, or eliminates redundant agencies. In all 3 of those cases, the president already has the power to do it. This is where they duped Trump. They said you can't do that because that'll involve mass firings, and there are civil service protections that protect the bureaucrats. Read the law. Those civil service protections only apply to individual firings. They don't apply to mass layoffs. Mass firings are absolutely what I am bringing to the D.C. bureaucracy. So the short answer to your question is yes, and we will have a 75% reduction of the total number of federal bureaucrats by the end of my first term. I think we have a reasonable plan for getting it done, 50% of that, by the end of my first month. And so I think that this is what it's going to take to gut that bureaucracy. Now, will we get sued over it? Yes, we will, because they will cite all these other provisions. The good news is, and this is where I give Trump a lot of credit, he gave us a great Supreme Court that agrees with me 6-3 on everything I've just told you. So now what does that mean? The next guy who comes after me in January of 2033 won't have his hands tied in the same way. That's how you drive change. And that's what gives me my sense of urgency right now. First of all, we don't have a lot of time left as a country. Right? If my 2 sons are in high school by the time we get this right, I don't think we have a country left. But this is also our opportunity where we have a Supreme Court that's on the right side. It's the one bastion we can at least as best we can, believe is going to stand for the Constitution. Combine that with a president who understands and swears an oath to the Constitution and actually understands what the Constitution means. This is our chance to get this right. And this is our window. We're not going to have this for a long time. My faith teaches me that God puts us here for a purpose, and we have a moral duty to realize that purpose. It is going to take an outsider to get this job done, and Trump was that, and I bring that, but it takes an outsider who also understands the law and the Constitution deeply. Those 2 things don't usually go well together. But you have the law professor types that'll pontificate and understand the law, but they're not going to get anything done. You have a guy who's going to be a business leader who's going to maybe get something done as an executive, but may not usually understand that in depth. We need both of those things to actually get it done in this moment we're in now. And so each of us every day looks ourselves in the mirror and asks ourselves, what are the unique God-given gifts that God put in me to do my part here? That's why I'm in this race, is I think it's at this moment, it's going to take that skill set to get that job done, and I'm confident that we can. Not just energy, but Department of Education, CDC, Food and Nutrition Services within the Department of Ag. Moving the Department of Ag to Iowa is one of the things we said we're going to do, but regardless of that, this much we can do is shut down much of that administrative state, including much of that Department of Energy. Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you. Going in the back here. No, right, that's you.
I was going to say, I feel like healthcare has been a hot button issue in previous campaigns and presidencies, and I don't hear as much about it. My rates are through the roof, but I've got a son who's benefiting from lower rates, and that feels good. But is this still a thing? Is it still something that...
I mean, it's a thing in that it's a problem.
Right.
It's a big problem. It's almost like the problem's gotten so big that we're just ignoring it, as though it can't be solved. I think it can. So this came up briefly last night. Did you watch last night or not?
I had to turn it off.
That's a very legitimate decision to make. Yeah. If I was in your shoes, I'd have done the same thing. We had some fun there. But I'll tell you this. So it came up towards the end. And it's actually, this is something my wife brings up every day, is why the heck isn't anybody talking about healthcare? She brings it up because she's a throat surgeon at the cancer hospital at Ohio State. She was caring for patients all day yesterday, flew down to Alabama She flew out before I did this morning to be seeing patients at 7 a.m. in Ohio again today. So she's a hero. She's going to set an example of what, from the seat of First Lady, what somebody can do for this country. But one of the examples I gave last night, she and I were just talking about this last week, so it was front of mind for me, is there's a lot of patients who haven't eaten food for years after they've had throat cancer and radiation therapy. The healthcare system will pay for all kinds of wild interventions and therapies, doctors to be pill pushers of expensive pharmaceuticals, all kinds of feeding tubes and everything else. But for whatever reason, it doesn't even pay for the simple set of procedures that can actually make that person's life better. So in Apoorva's case, in my wife's case, she does those procedures anyway, even though she doesn't get paid for them, because she thinks because we believe that's the right thing to do. And thankfully that works for our family, but that doesn't work system-wide. A system can't rely on that. And so the heart of the cost in the healthcare system we got to understand is we don't have a healthcare system. We have a sick care system. That's what we have in this country. And so the solution is we need health insurance options that cover a wider range of health measures than just the narrow and arbitrary set of what's actually being covered today. I mean, this isn't that complicated. So how do we get there, though? Why isn't the private market providing this? Answer: government intervention. It's basically government run through the back door. One of the first things I can do that's easy is repeal the special antitrust provisions. There's antitrust exemption provisions that health insurance companies enjoy. Repeal that out of the gate. Now we'll have competition amongst private health insurance options. You can actually have different flavors that can actually match different people. That brings rates down. Why are rates so high? It's because we don't have competition in the marketplace. Why don't we have competition in the marketplace? Because the biggest people in the industry lobby the government to give them special exemptions from the antitrust rules that normally apply. Now you go to even looking at Medicare versus Medicare Advantage. Both are broken, but Medicare Advantage is a lot less broken than the centralized Medicare. So half the people who get their Medicare get it through Medicare Advantage, where they just effectively give you the money to be able to at least pick your option through the private health insurance market. Not only is it cheaper, but people actually have far better results through Medicare Advantage too for themselves. Now imagine if that private marketplace were far more competitive without the antitrust exemptions. Now we're talking. Then let's get a couple layers deeper. I don't know how much you know about my background, but I've built several businesses. One of them is a biotech company. I've overseen the development of 5 FDA-approved medicines. One of them is a life-saving therapy in kids. We could have developed every one of those drugs for a tiny fraction of the cost if the barriers for bringing a new drug to market weren't so high. Why is it high? Because of pharma industry lobbying. Big pharma wants the barriers to be high because it reduces competition. So these are simple changes that, again, this shouldn't be red versus blue at all. These are nonpartisan changes we're able to make. The real obstacle here is the lobbying. Health insurance industry lobbying, pharmaceutical industry lobbying. That's why I said this. I was so focused on the corruption issue on the debate stage last night. That's our real enemy. You should not be joining the board of a company if you've been in government regulating that company. You shouldn't be able to lobby the government for 10 years until after you leave the government. I don't think at all, but at least for 10 years you shouldn't be able to do it. You shouldn't be trading stocks of individual companies while you're sitting in Congress or sitting as a regulator. I want to repeat, these are not Democrat ideas or Republican ideas. And there's a reason why both parties are actually basically opposed to it. Because they're both bought and paid for by some of the same people. So end the corruption and then fixing the healthcare system is actually, there's some complexity, but the country that put a man on the moon can do this. It's not technically all that difficult. It's the special interests, both from the health insurance industry and the farm industry, that stop it. And it's going to take an outsider with fresh legs to cut through that, who isn't bought and paid for by that same establishment, to actually see this through. And that's one of the things I aim to get done in going after that bureaucracy. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. We'll go to the back there, sir.
Yeah, I just had a question on, I pretty much agree with everything you say. I just had a question on how do you propose to get past opposition or the corruption? Do you think we'll have enough support to push past that, to implement all the things that you've talked about?
Yep. Well, that's not in my hands alone. That's in your hands. That's why we're here. So there's this election and there's what comes after. Let me talk about the election first. The system is not set up for a guy like me to do this. An outsider from the next generation. It's not supposed to work that way. I mean, even within the Republican Party, this small boarding stuff that doesn't matter. I don't care about this, but even last night, you guys watched that debate. Why is it, you just listen to the audience, the people in the room versus who are the people at home. Why does it work that way? Certain campaigns treated certain ways, certain campaigns treated a different way. Why criticize Ronna McDaniel? They know how to treat you in return. It's a broken system within our party. It's a broken system through the electoral system. It's a broken electoral system, and then it's a broken government. So our last best chance to do it is going to be somebody coming from the outside to do this. In my case, my biggest donor is me. Every politician dances to the tune of their biggest donor. That's a fact. At least let it be the person who's actually running, who's actually that person's biggest donor. I think it's going to take somebody with fresh legs to do this. This is the middle of a war on this bureaucracy in this country. But I think we're going to succeed in the next phase of this war if it's somebody with fresh legs. Somebody who has not yet been wounded in that war. And I respect the heck out of President Trump's contributions to this country. He rolled over that log in the deep state. We saw what crawled out. But now it's my turn to bring the pesticide. That's the way I look at it. And that's going to take both the outsider sharp elbows breaking glass, but also somebody who really sticks to the Constitution to see this through. And I'll kind of bring it back to my higher belief, what my faith teaches me. When you're guided by that purpose, nothing's going to stop you along the way. When you think about me, it's done by me, then it's going to be impossibly difficult, be crippling. But when you remind yourself it's not being done by us, it is being done through us, that's what gives me my freedom. And when we're tethered to true purpose, swearing an oath to the Constitution, sticking true to that at every step of the way and keeping it, then yeah, I believe we're darn right going to be successful. And I think that you're guided by that sense of purpose. You don't let something stop you in between. You're guided by the law. If they want to take us to the Supreme Court, great. We'll win 6-3 at that current Supreme Court at every step of the way. I think the people on this country are on our side. I don't even talk about Republicans versus Democrats that much for this reason. I think we're going to win this election in a landslide if I'm your nominee. That's my commitment to you. If you make me your nominee, it is my accountability to deliver you a landslide election in the general. I think we can do that. We're bringing young people into this movement at a scale our party hasn't done in a generation. 40% of our donors are first-time ever donors to the Republican Party, compared to 2% for a normal Republican candidate. So I think we have an opportunity to do something similar, if not greater, than what Reagan did in 1980. And I know that sounds about as ridiculous for me to say as it did for Reagan in December of '79. But I absolutely think we can do it, but that comes down to you all going first. The system isn't set up for a guy like me, but we can do this because Iowa goes first. Because we trust you to tell the difference between somebody who's giving you poll-tested platitudes and somebody who's sharing with you their true convictions. If I win Iowa, I'm your next president. If I'm your next president, when we leave office in January 2033 after 2 terms, I will tell you when we leave that office, we shut down the deep state. We declared independence from communist China. We grew our economy in the process. We stayed out of World War III. That my 2 sons and their generation, that they're once again proud to be citizens of this nation. That much I know I can deliver you. Question is, what happens between now and the next 40 days, between now and January 15th? That's why I'm here, actually, is to ask you for your help. A guy like me, we're putting immense resources from our family and from small dollar donors as well into this campaign, but I can't compete with the super PACs that are flooding your TVs and your mailboxes with ads. Those aren't even from the campaigns. Those are from super PACs. It's a separate source of corruption, actually. But a guy like me can do it because we're doing it this way. They say some candidates do the full grass league, means you go to all 99 counties. We're doing the full grass league times 2. I will have been to every county times 2 by the time we're done with this, in roomfuls like this. There's no social media algorithms in the air between us right now. I promise. There's no TV screens between us. Fellow citizens, speaking honestly to one another, making a decision. You all, can you actually raise your hand if you've been to the caucus before? I'm actually curious to see. It's about half of you in here. It's a little less than half at the last event that I was in. That's a very good sign for us, actually. Many of the people coming to the caucus are coming for the first time. College campuses on downward. I think we're going to deliver a major shock on January 15th. I think we have a very good chance of winning the Iowa caucus. I think the people in the state are going to put up somebody who, to take several of these questions together, are you actually going to be able to take on the corruption? Here's your last best chance to do it. If you want somebody who's going to speak truth to power, then vote for somebody who's going to speak the truth to you. Why am I the only candidate who's able to talk about, even in this state, the corrupt carbon capture pipeline? I don't know how many of you are familiar with this issue. They're building it across your state in the name of this global climate cult. Not a single other Republican in this race has the spine to touch it. Why? Because the same special interests that try to silence me on it are effectively silencing them. That's what happens. It's an unspeakable topic. Why am I the only candidate on that stage who's able to acknowledge the truth? Look at the video evidence that it now looks like January 6th was a product of government entrapment. At least in part, an inside job. The fact that that same government is the one that lied to us for years about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, that lied to us about the Trump-Russia collusion hoax, about the origin of the COVID pandemic, about the Hunter Biden laptop story, now about how our own money is being spent in Ukraine. The only person who can say the 2020 election on that stage that was stolen by big tech. And even the 2016 election in some ways was stolen by the national security establishment that didn't let Trump govern for 2 years because of a Trump-Russia collusion hoax that they knew was false. That Ronna McDaniel should resign as a failed chairwoman of the RNC after 5 failed years of leadership. Why am I the only candidate who's able to say those things? It's because I don't report to the people in that audience last night. I report to you, the people of this country. That is what it's going to take to fight the corruption. And I think I'm in this race because I honestly believe I am our last best chance to do this, and we're not working with a lot of time. And with your help, yes, we will get that job done. You do your part. I'm going to do mine. We'll take one last question. Please, young man.
I feel like over my lifetime, I've seen the unity in this country decrease rapidly. It feels like we're at a 50-50 point. Is there a way we could get back to the post 9/11 unity, country together, and how would you go about doing that?
Yeah, so I care deeply about national unity. We've lost that in this country. E pluribus unum. From many, one. That from one we have become many. Here's my route to getting there. I disagree with many fellow Republicans on this. Some people think the way we're going to get to national unity is through compromise. Right? Show up at the 50-yard line, make some compromises, hold hands, sing Kumbaya, and call it a day and say we're unified. I don't think that's going to actually work. I don't think that's real unity. I think the way we're going to unite this country, it sort of ties to my answer to the very first question, actually. The way we're going to unite this country is by embracing the radicalism of our shared ideals. You see, the idea that you're able to speak your mind freely as long as I get to in return, that is a radical idea, actually. For most of our country's history, most of our world's history, it was done the other way. Old world Europe on down. That was a radical idea in the United States. The idea that we, the people, settle our differences in a republic where every citizen's voice and vote counts equally at the ballot box. That's a wild idea. That is an extreme idea. That is a radical idea. It is the radicalism of the American Revolution. That's what that was about. So that's the key, is we're going to unite this country not by, as we're taught by the powers that be, to do it through moderation, but by embracing the radicalism of 1776. By reuniting the shared values that unite all of us. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm 20.
You're 20, so you're a generation younger than me. I'm 38. But I think the issue in our generation is, I said this before, we were taught to celebrate those differences so much. Our diversity is our strength, we were told. Our diversity is not our strength. Our strength is what unites us across that diversity. Without that, just think about it. If that didn't exist, what do we see in the country today? We're a bunch of different looking two-legged higher mammals with a bunch of different shades of melanin walk in some geographic space that we call a country, doing what our iPhones told us to do on a given day. That's what the country looks like on certain days to me. But that is not America. America is a vision of what that place can be. That's what we're going to have to revive in this country. And so, yes, Thomas Jefferson, I talked about him last night. He was 33 years old. He was somewhere in between you and I when he wrote the Declaration of Independence. And I said last night, too, he invented the swivel chair while he was at it. That's the spirit we're going to need to revive. He wasn't a moderate. He was a guy who believed in absolute free speech, who believed that we're the pioneers, we're the explorers, the unafraid. And half of this is not going to come through policy. Half of this is going to come from a president who revives our national character. I'm an America First conservative, all in. But to put America first, we now have to rediscover what America is. I think it's been a long time. I mean, I've got two boys myself. One's 3.5 and one's a year and a half. It has been a long time since we've had a president who we could look our kids in the eye and tell them in good conscience that I want you to grow up and be like him, whoever that is in the White House. That is the standard that I want you to hold our family to when we are there. What Reagan said when he left office in 1989, and I don't watch inauguration speeches, they bore me, they're full of unfulfilled promises. I watch the farewell speeches where they tell you what they actually did. Of all the things Reagan could have said in 1989 that he was proud of, bringing us to the near end of the Cold War, reviving our economy, everything else, he didn't pick any of that. He said he was most proud of reviving our national character. When I leave office in January 2033, for all the things I told you we would tell you, the most important thing I want to tell you is that my two sons and their generation, your generation, can say that we are once again proud to be citizens of this nation. Fill our hunger for purpose with our American national identity that dilutes this poisonous agenda to irrelevance. We don't, I'll close on this, we don't have to be ancient Rome. We don't have to be that nation in decline. Actually, I think as a nation, like you, we are really just a little young, actually. Going through our own version of adolescence. Figuring out who we're going to be when we grow up. And when you view it that way, it makes sense again, actually. You go through that adolescence, you go through that identity crisis. You lose your way a little bit. Do some stupid things. I don't know about you, but I did. Our country certainly is right now. But we are stronger for it when we get to our adulthood on the other side. So I'm going to ask you to do something and spread this word to the people around you too, in your age group and otherwise. We don't have to be in decline. I think we can still be a nation in our ascent. It's not morning in America right now, but it can be. The American dream is not alive and well right now. I'm not going to sit here to a 20-year-old who's presumably hardworking, entering the economy, trying to make his way. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and tell you the American dream is alive and well right now. It is not. It is alive and hanging on by life support. But it can be. And I think it's going to take the right leader from that next generation to lead us there. So if you do your part, I mean that. We all have a role to play. It's not going to be just one of us coming from on high, from the White House to save us. If we're going to be saved, we're going to be saved by ourselves. But if you all do your part, if you do your part, people in your generation, your peers, every one of you do your part, then Apoorv and I and our family are going to do ours to make sure that our country's best days are, yes, still ahead of us. To make sure that we will look our kids in the eye and tell them and mean it that the United States of America is still the country where no matter who you are, or where your parents came from, or what your skin color is, that you get ahead in this country with your own hard work, your own commitment, your own dedication. And that you know what? You are free to speak your minds at every step of the way. That is the American dream. That is what we are running to. And with your help, I mean this on January 15th, with your help, between now and then, spreading this message to every person you know in this community and bringing them out on January 15th too, with your help, that is what we're going to revive to save this great country. Thank you for coming out, guys. God bless you and your families. God bless our great country. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.